Please welcome to the stage Veronica Romney, Rainmaker Residency, podcast host, former chief of staff.
That's me. Oh, it's me.
That's you. You got it.
Thanks. Hello. We're going to go bold. Are you ready to be bold?
Yes.
Okay. Is your brand strong enough to be buried in? I want you to meet a man named Billy Stanley. Billy Stanley lost his fight to lung cancer on February 1st, 2014. He was an extraordinary individual, a true visionary. He was a former truck driver, a rodeo rider, an avid traveler. And when he passed away at his funeral, there was hundreds and hundreds of people there to celebrate his life. Now, the reason I'm telling you this story is because his funeral was unlike any funeral I promise you have ever seen, because it took 18 years to make. He actually met with the funeral director local to him 18 years before he passed, before he ever even got sick. And he recruited his sons to help him build out this vision, because here was the vision that he had for how he would be put to rest. He said, I don't want to just ride into heaven. I want the world to see me do it. Are you ready to see how Billy went to heaven? That's Billy. That's a plexiglass coffin that took 5 years to make with his sons, and it just sat in the garage and waited for him to die. And he had to buy 3 extra grave plots to even fit this monstrosity in the ground, because this is how Billy wanted to be remembered. His sons told ABC News this was his wish, and we granted him his final wish. He rode his motorcycle to the grave, and he is still riding it today. Ironically, this is not the first time I've heard a story this crazy. In fact, I was 17 years old sitting in an undergraduate marketing class called Consumer Behavior. That's me. And I remember my professor teaching us about like the subconscious and how these big brands like Disney and different grocery stores, like they'll do things to like play on a consumer subconscious to get you to buy things and you don't even know why you want to buy it. And I remember him telling me this, now I'm like 20 years ago at this point, that writers and their families on a routine basis will actually personally commission funeral homes and coffin makers to custom make these coffins in the branding of Harley Davidson so that they can be buried for time and all eternity in their Harley hog identity. Now, what's interesting about when I learned this and where I learned it is because I went to a school called the Marriott School of Business in Provo, Utah. If any of you are familiar with Provo, Utah, it is a very unique culture. It is a very deeply religious community of incredible human beings. And I went to a church-funded private institution. And in this community of its members, I'm sitting in class learning about people being buried in Harley, but I know that members of this faith are also buried in religious clothing and religious emblems because they want to be buried in their faith. Do you know what the earliest proof of identity-affirming burials that archaeologists have found? Do you know how old this practice goes back? 120,000 years ago. They discovered in a cave in Israel 15 human beings with over 71 pieces of identity-affirming artifacts to indicate what they did and how they self-identified when they were living. Do you know how old Harley Davidson is? Minus 3 zeros. They were founded in 1903. So I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked myself. How the hell did a capitalistic brand achieve the same level of devotion as a world religion and a practice that dates over 120,000 years ago? Billy Stanley didn't die with his Harley. He died as a Harley hog. This is what I call identity marketing. I define identity marketing as connecting your brand so deeply with your consumer's identity, who they are and who they wish to become, that they want to literally be buried in your brand. And because I'm giving this presentation to a room full of badass marketers, I need to make the differentiation that I'm not talking about brand identity. Brand identity is your intentional effort to differentiate yourself in the marketplace with your wrapping paper, right? Business marketers in the business community, we are literally the gift wrappers of the world. We wrap our products, our services, our offers, our companies, our brands, and we bring it to the public. And we're like, do you want this? That's brand identity. Identity marketing is how I identify. It's my self-concept, who I am, what I call myself, how I want to be remembered, the actions and the investments that I take to affirm my self-concept, which, if we're being really honest, has never been more freaking needed. Why? Because we collectively in this room have been through some shit in the last 4 years. And I'm not going to tell you what you've been through. We know what we've been through. And I've had a lot of conversations in the last 2 days that I've been here in Banff. How many of you are going through a company rebrand right now? Yeah, several. We're also in the era of the consumer rebrand. Because who I was before this 4 years of cluster is not who I am today. Not as a mother, a wife, a practitioner, a marketer, an entrepreneur, a speaker. I'm different. You're different. 2024 has kind of been a year of reckoning. Like, is this really what you want to be doing for the rest of your life? Is this how you want to be showing up? It's way more than who the hell are you voting for? Okay? So what happens when your ideal customer avatar doesn't know how ideal they are anymore? There goes the effectiveness of our marketing, no? And it's losing us a lot more than just money. In fact, this is where marketing, my beloved marketing, gets a really bad rap because we still have quota to hit and we still have numbers to make. So what do? We pitch slap them hard. Pitch slap. Register today, order now, limited time only, while supplies last. Final freaking call. I've done it. I've even advised people to do it. Ugh, right? Yes, people are buying, but they're not buying like they used to, and it's not because of an economy situation either. So stop blaming that. I think most of us can admit, as marketers, we were taught, whether in school or on the job, that the way to approach marketing our products and our services is by what I call outcomes-based marketing, which is emphasizing what people can achieve or unlock by buying our stuff. But what if, instead of more buy this, it's be this? Because certainly that's what Harley's doing. That's why people are buried in their Harley-Davidson identity as a hog. It's why Barbie, we have been a witness to one of the greatest brand comebacks of all time. Because it was never about her. It was never about her. Think about how the movie started.
I am technically stereotypical Barbie.
You set the feminist movement back 50 years. You destroy girls' innate sense of worth, and you are killing the planet with your glorification of rampant consumerism. No.
Damn. But think about how the movie ends.
Don't you control me?
I can't control you any more than I could control my own daughter. I named you after her, Barbara, and I always hoped for you like I hoped for her. We mothers stand still so our daughters can look back to see how far they've come.
I've cried all morning. This is my first year at the gathering, and crying was not on the list. Like, oh my gosh. But it was never about the doll's identity. It was about 3-year-old Veronica's identity. You ever want to see a picture of your own inner child? She's fierce and fabulous in her pink Barbie convertible with stereotypical Barbie. It was about little girls' potential, who they are and who they got to become, not because of a doll. And I can't stand on this stage and talk about identity marketing without also addressing literally the identity of the century. I mean, right? I recently had a woman on my podcast named Olivia Levin. She's one of the most popular fan-based accounts on Instagram. She's been running Swifties for eternity since she was 13 years old. She's now 24, which makes it 11-year commit. And I had her on the podcast because I was like, I want to deeply understand why people say I'm a fan of Taylor, but I'm not a Swiftie. Like what makes one identity and one not? And on the podcast, she said, as a fan, I'm a fan of lots of artists. It's kind of like a casual appreciation. I can be a fan of lots of different people, lots of different genres of music. But Swifties, that is earned and you are fully freaking invested. You know her lyrics, you know the meaning behind the lyrics, you know the lore, the Easter eggs. You are so invested in her process because she involves you in the process. When you root for her, you're rooting for yourself. Swiftie, that right to say it, is earned and it's an investment. But do you know which identity might be even stronger than the Swiftie identity? Is NFL fans. They'll chant the Eagle fight song at the wedding. They'll be buried in the gear. I mean, it's a different level of loyalty. Look at this. It's radiating an energy at you right now, these images. So what happens when Swifties and NFL fans get together? Lots and lots of money. Because when she started dating he, what happens to that podcast? I was a huge fan of that podcast before they started dating. I thought the dynamic between Travis Kelce and his brother is just so fun to watch. But as soon as she went to that first Chiefs game, that podcast popped off. And they just sold it for $100 million to Amazon. And more than just the collaboration between these two identities, a new identity was formed. The family has changed. Now you have little girls and mothers watching games with dad and brothers and uncles and grandpas. And you have dads and brothers showing up at the concerts in the gear. The family has changed as well. So here's a problem. So I'm just going to address the elephant in the room. You don't have that. You don't have Swift stardom. You don't have Barbie budget. And you don't have the history of Harley to leverage. You don't need it. You don't need it. I've been a marketer for 17 years. I've worked for both publicly traded companies, privately held organizations. I've worked for faceless brands, huge, highest visibility personal brands. I also have the incredible honor and opportunity to work intimately in teams. I literally do it on-site or virtual, and I go in and I help them integrate some of these strategies I'm teaching you today. And then I also get to geek out every single week on my podcast by interviewing cool people like maybe some of you. In fact, it was actually Mandy. I didn't even realize that the gathering was this awesome. She contacted me because she was listening to my podcast while walking her dog. Isn't that cool? I'm here because of a podcast. So, now, whether you're a Fortune 100 company or you are an intern in this room with no marketing budget yet, anyone can leverage the psychology of identity because I'm going to teach you the identity code. The identity code is something that I write about extensively in my new book coming out in January. So my identity is also changing. And it's only 4 steps. Find it, prove it, name it, dress it. Now, of course, identity marketing is a deeply personal endeavor. So I'm going to teach you the basic how-tos, but the best results is coming from you and your relationship with your customers and your audience. But let's get into it. Find it. Identities are born in 2 ways. One, either the people name it themselves, like Swifties. She didn't call them that. They called themselves that. And then she adopted it and blessed it. Hogs. Hogs was something that the people called themselves. There was a riding group that literally when they won their races would tie hogs to the back of the bikes. And the company loved it so much that they named it like the Harley Owners Group. So either the people themselves call themselves what they want to be known as, or the brand offers an identity and it gets adopted successfully. The first thing that you're going to do, whether you already have an identity or you need to find an identity for your organization, is you need to become a secret shopper, an identity secret shopper. And the cool thing is you don't have to spend like millions of dollars in these like big search secret shopper companies because we have all of this fun stuff that's free. We have social media platforms, community groups, customer testimonials, event feedback, hashtags, comments in Instagram, sales call transcripts, Zoom chat logs. 2 weeks ago, I was running one of my identity marketing intensives where different teams come on virtually and I teach them how to do this. And I was working with an organization called Talkbox.mom. Talkbox.mom, literally their brand promise is the day you buy the product is the day that you and your family start speaking a foreign language. It's a pretty bold claim. And it's a pretty big competitive ocean of some other big, foreign language providers, no? So they started searching. The team, they brought the whole marketing team to my intensive, and they all kind of divided and conquer. So somebody took the Reddit threads, another person took this platform, that platform, and they just basically took 30 to 60 minutes and started searching for words that would identify their customers beyond just company name, right? And what they found really quickly in their testimonials was there's certain words that started to pop up a lot. Family, fluency, fluent, bilingual. The problem with the word bilingual, it's you got to own that. And people feel like they have to be perfect at a foreign language before they will ever claim that they are bilingual. But the whole point of Talkbox.mom, the reason that they even make that bold claim is because they don't focus on grammar. F grammar. Little children don't learn a foreign language by being told how to conjugate a verb. How do little children learn? By just talking, because mommy and daddy talk that way. It's about fluency, not grammar. So they came up with fluency families because that was an aspiration that the whole family could get behind, which is a huge shift because if you think about it, the company name is Talkbox.mom. It's a mom identity, but yet the people, it was actually a family identity. It was the family that wanted to become fluent so that they could travel the world and feel comfortable speaking in a foreign language in Mexico or Spain or Brazil or wherever they wanted to go. What's really cool about this identity shift for them is it becomes an opportunity for more expansion. Now they can have a fluency family podcast. They can do strategic collaborations because not everybody's in the business of foreign language, but how many businesses are in the pursuit of up-leveling the family? Right? They're also a WeBank certified organization. How many government agencies or military families have to go abroad for a season of time? They don't know the language. Wouldn't that be great? If they can support the family. And on top of that, there's an identity within an identity. Yes, fluency families is an aspirational identity that they can give to prospects, but then customers, once they're in, the goal can then become consistent in their fluency. So they have a consistency crew membership for their paid customers. It's pretty cool. Now, before you rush off and update all of your marketing stuff, once you've gone through the Reddit threads and your social media and all that fun stuff, you have to prove it. Because there's a lot of really sad examples of where a brand offered an identity to its people and it was badly rejected. Pepsi Generation, Budweiser Bro Code. The easiest, fastest way to validate something today is to literally think like a comedian. Because before you ever see the Netflix special, they've already workshopped their jokes in dirty ass clubs in the middle of nowhere, making sure that the people like what's happening before we ever see it on prime time. Now, you're not a comedian. I try to be sometimes. But what we can do is we can take what we found in the comments and we can promote it to our content. So we don't have to go to dirty clubs. We have social media, which is our dirty club as a marketer, if we're being honest, right? I want you to meet Nicole the intern. Nicole the intern is a recent graduate. And she personally made the choice that she didn't want to drink anymore for health reasons. And she was in Texas and she found this woman, Christina, who owned a company called Mixology, which is a non-alcoholic beverage company. And she pitched herself to this woman week after week to work for her. And finally, she's like, Christina's like, I have no budget, but fine. I can pay you $15 an hour as an intern. So she got hired literally as $15 an hour intern. Now, non-alcoholic beverage category is probably one of the most red, saturated oceans of a category possible. So how do you as a startup break through? So they had this crazy idea. What if we took Instagram by storm, did a challenge. I have 60 days as Nicole the intern to hit 500,000 followers to prove to my boss that smashing this mixology can is more effective than his entire CMO marketing strategy. Watch what happens. Day 1, we see this. That's it. Literally, that's it. Day 2, same gimmick. Day 3, lightning in a bottle. That video, the third reel, 30 million views. I had Mike Chambers, the CMO, and Nicole, the intern. Her name is actually Nicole Wingard on my podcast. And they knew it. They knew that they had struck lightning in a bottle, but they were literally building the plane as it was being flown. Like, they didn't know what they were doing. The next reel did not have 30 million views. So then it was like, well, let's switch it up. So they started doing these like kind of quirky costumes. They put her in like a Yoshi costume, I think as a piñata, as Kill Bill. But then on day 10, Nicole had the idea, what if we take this can and pretend like it's a grenade, right? And chuck it.
Call the intern over now.
That one gesture took off. The comments went nuts because they wanted to rally behind the intern who was trying to stick it to her boss. How many of you want to stick it to your, no, don't admit that right now. Your boss is in the room. Day 15, the Smash Army was born. They offered it. Hey, hashtag Smash Army. And the people took it. And not only did they take it, they ran with it. You can literally go to the website and buy merch. That image of her quirky face with this like army helmet is like the image of the campaign. And then it just gets better because on day 30, someone special enters the scene.
Appears Gary V is a fan of Mike and smashing, but he still hasn't joined the Smash Army.
I'll tell you. Let me give you an example. I don't know if I'm betting on her. Nick Dio hit me up with someone yesterday, and I loved it.
Day 44, she crushes her goal. 16 days before the goal, she crushes 500,000. And then because it just gets better, this guy officially joins the Smash Army.
Nicole, your 4 o'clock's here.
Send him in.
Reporting for duty. Let's smash some fucking cans.
Your average, Papa twist cabbage off instinct. Just don't think, shit stink, pink gators. My Detroit players, Tim's for my hooligans in Brooklyn.
Is that not like awesome? This happened April of 2024. It just happened. Just between us, Gary V slid into her DMs and said, if your boss doesn't give you a raise or like whatever, I'll hire you. Let's try to poach her. He's so smart. The entire campaign was a massive, massive smashing success. $0 spent on ads, 0 to 527,000 followers in 60 days, 250 million impressions, 500 website visits, 60,000 email signups, a 9x increase in sales, and they completely rebranded their company from Mixology, because who can say that, to Smashed because of the Smash Army. You can literally go to their website right now and join the Smash Army as they take on investor money to take their cause to the next level. And because of the strength of this identity, they are literally smashing a $1.5 trillion industry and a $500 billion non-alcoholic category. Is that wild? Step number 3. What does it mean to be a Swiftie? What does it mean to be a Smash Army member? What does it mean? I don't know about you. I've had some children. And when I had that's not actually my kid, but when I had, mine's cuter. When I had some children and I tell the world, like, this is Miles and this is James, like the next question that usually comes out of somebody's mouth is, why'd you name them Miles or James? Right? I just told somebody what my dog's name is. She's like, why'd you name him Kaya? Like, because Kaya's in the book where the crawdads sing, and she's a North Carolina girl. Right? We psychologically want to understand what something means, especially behind a name. So you as marketers can't just call somebody the Fluency family, or can't just call somebody this. It's gimmicky. It has to have depth and meaning. So I want you to meet your Canadian neighbor, Alex Catoni. She's actually here in Canada, and I'm obsessed with her. She helps copywriters basically launch their businesses as like sole practitioners. And she comes from the marketing space, and she was angry with the direction that like bro marketers were going in. So she literally wanted to de-Dutchify, I didn't even know that was a word, the internet. So she launched her business, and it is bold, the second coming of copy, and we are leading the way. We are the new school of copywriters. But copywriters, I mean, yeah, like that's technically what you call yourself when you're in the, pursuit of copywriting. But you know what's cooler than being a copywriter is being a posse member. So right from the jump, she called them posse. This is the copy posse. And the copy posse was started with the mission years ago that it is today, to redefine what it means to be a copywriter, a marketer, and an entrepreneur. And they are bold in what it means. If you go to the website, by the way, if you go to this website, it is probably the most perfect display of identity marketing that I've ever seen. Non-negotiables, empathy, integrity, fun, authenticity, innovation. They have a posse philosophy. They have big posse energy candles. They literally just finished their annual Posse Fest Live, like literally 2 weeks ago here in Vancouver. And the day after it finished, somebody tattooed the logo on their hand because they are marketing a pivotal journey in my life. You know you've made it when you got a tattoo of somebody's logo on your skin. I know we had hats last night as a gift, but where's the tattoo artist at the gathering? You know what I'm saying? Just Mandy. Thank you. Okay. And then my favorite step of all steps is the dress it step. Because this is where we can make intangibles feel really tangible. And you see it all the time, whether it's like Flo from Progressive or Mayhem from Allstate, or like, have you ever seen kids get mad at Google? Hey, Google, stop it, or Alexa or Siri. Like, those are really great examples of where companies try to make something that is literally intangible. You can't touch it, and it feels real by naming it, right? But that's more of the company or the thing's identity. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about your customer's identity. I want to talk about Red Ants Pants. It's one of my favorite examples. Red Ants Pants is a company started by this woman named Sarah Calhoun. Now, Sarah Calhoun was born literally on a farm. She has known hard labor her entire life. The thing with labor is that you need the proper clothing to do manual labor. And a couple years ago, 20 years ago, there was no clothing, workwear for women. Now, women have curves. I don't know if you knew this. We don't fit in square pants. So she went to Dickies and Carhartt and some like traditional like blue jean companies, and she kind of like knocked at the door. I was like, can you please make, workwear pants for women that fit women's curves? Because it's kind of awkward for us. And they just weren't interested. And this is like the birth of every entrepreneurial story you'll ever meet, right? Here's a problem. No one's solving it. I guess I have to. So she moves to Bozeman, Montana. And on her first weekend in town, she has this book at this little cafe. I mean, can you imagine? She's sitting there at this cafe reading Small Business for Dummies when this really kind man walks up to her and says, hey, I see this specific book title and topic. Why don't you tell me your story? So they strike up a conversation, and lo and behold, like whether you like subscribe to the universe, the invisible hand, God, but like you can't negate that this is kind of like divine intervention in some regards, because this individual spent the last 20 years of his career in production design for a small outdoor company that you might have heard of. And he proceeds to tell her, not only should she do it, she should do it fast before anybody else does. And then he opened up his Rolodex, his contacts. She went to like the facilities. He helped her and still sits on her board of advisors 20 years later. Now, she named the company Red Ants Pants. Why? Because in a red ant colony, guess who does all the work? It's the female ants. You know what the male ants do? They breed and they die. No offense. It's actually the female ants that do all of the hard work. So she named it Red Ants Pants in like kind of homage to what this company was really all about, because it's not just about the pants. Can we all agree? It was about the values. We believe in the value of rural communities, supporting women in leadership roles, preserving family farms and ranches, maintaining traditional work skills and the power of music. Her story is absolutely incredible because beyond the pants that solved an actual solution to a real problem, for her, it was always about bringing hardworking women together and having them be seen. And she decided early on that she wanted not to be a B2B category. She wanted to be a B2C provider. She wanted to sell the pants directly to the women. But she's not a marketer. So she literally took her dog and an Airstreamer and did the tour of pants, the tour de pants. And she would go town to town in the middle of nowhere. I'm talking like cities that have a population of 1,000 or less, if even that. Like these real boom or bust type of like towns, extraction towns is what she called them. And she would invite people not just to buy the pants, but more importantly, to join the anthill. And she would chronicle the tour de pants on her blog called The Antidote. And their marketing was fun. Again, it was all about connection to women who are traditionally underserved. And so she did the Red Ant Challenge. So what they would do is they would sew these little red ants in the pants, right? But what they decided to do was like the seamstress would start sewing the red ants in different locations in the pants. So then if you found a woman where she had a pant, like her red ant in the same cheek as you did, or in the same place in the pant, you were instantly connected. That was the whole point. And then they started a music festival, literally in the middle of nowhere in a cow pasture. And the very first year they did it, in 2012, shockingly, 6,000 people showed up, which is triple the size of the entire county's population. Last year, they had 18,000 people. She's not just bringing women together, she's also uplifting community by community by community wherever she goes. She's had artists like Winona Ryder and Brandy Carlisle, and these women don't even really understand the whole red ant. Like they didn't go because of the red ant at first, but then they learn the story and the meaning, the deep meaning behind these pants, and they wear the pants on the stage. There was one woman, she told me on the podcast episode, right at the end of the podcast, she just kind of like said it flippantly, and I was like, wow. She said there was a woman in her community that had like kind of this significant surgery that she was going in for, and she intentionally wore her Red Ants pants because it made her feel stronger and braver. How cool is that? This, to me, is what I call the power of personification. Personification is making something that's not real feel real. We talked about a lot, actually, in the last couple of hours about this. And again, we're not talking about brand identity. I'm not talking about your brand guidelines. I'm talking about if your identity was a walking, talking, breathing thing, what would it wear? What would it wear? If the Fluency family went on vacation, what would be on their Spotify playlist? Probably like the entire album of like Walter Mitty, I'm guessing, right? Like, what is your identity wear? What does it listen to? I was telling my VIP host that I was going back to my room to get ready to speak. And he's like, you want me to give you a pep talk? I'm like, no, I'll play Eminem and DMX. I'm ready. Like, what do you listen to as an identity? Who do you hang out with? Who do you hang out with? right? And if you were to create a space for your identity, what would it look like? What would it feel like? The power of personification. We go through this whole exercise in my intensive where we literally outline all of these things so that your identity feels like a walking, talking thing, because that's the level of intimacy we want you to have. This, my friends, is what I call the undeniable power of identity marketing. And I've shown you just how powerful it can be in creating eternal loyalty, turning setbacks into comebacks, disrupting overly saturated markets, exploding market share, prioritizing long-term relationships over like gimmicky sales stunts. It affirms, this is really important, when you have identity-based marketing messaging, your messaging, your ads, they don't annoy somebody. They affirm somebody's self-concept. They have a natural inclination to do the thing that you're asking them to do because they see themselves in the identity. And it transforms intangibles into lucrative tangibles. But more than all of that, the implications for marketing and sales, identity means so much more. A couple weeks ago, I raced. I mean, like, you know how it is as a marketer. Like, you're just going from like the crack of dawn sometimes until like the last minute. And then you got to like run into the car to go pick up your kids because it's that time of day where I have to go from like boss mode identity to like mom mode identity. So I'm in the car and car line and I'm picking up my man cubs. I call them man cubs because they're half naked half the time. So I'm picking up my man cubs and they're like my heart and soul. Like they're everything. And I'm deeply biased. They're perfect. But man, there's just certain moments as a parent, and you know if you're a parent in the room, where like the world kind of stops spinning because you know it's a monumental moment. And my oldest, Miles, gets in the car with he has a swagger. I don't know where he gets it from, but he definitely has this like swagger. And he gets in the car and he's like, Mom, how much money did you make today? I was like, what the And it's like one of those moments where I'm like, like, I'm kind of like proud of this kid. Like, that's awesome. Because he knows mommy's an entrepreneur. Mommy is her own boss. How many people have come up to me and been like, hey, who are you? I'm like, oh, I'm Veronica. Like, who are you with? I'm like, I'm Veronica from Veronica. Like, that's me. That's my identity. He knows that. He knows daddy has a boss, but mommy is her boss. And so he asked me, Mommy, how much did you make today? Like, that's really cool. But also, like, I'm now questioning all my parenting. Like, I don't know. Like, it's a very, like, paradoxical moment. And more than that, it's like, again, in like the slowing of time, it made me also reflect, like, I would never have asked my parents this question. And I know for damn sure that my parents never would have asked their parents this question. Because my parents would have asked their parents something like this after school. ¿Hay comida para comer? ¿Hay comida para comer? Which translates to, is there food to eat? My parents are Cuban immigrants. That's their kindergarten pictures in Cuba. And in Cuba, I don't know if you've ever been or you know much. I know the Canadians love Cuba. But in Cuba, the food is rationed. Right? This is a communist country. They don't just go to the store. Your family is appointed a certain quantity of rice, beans, and protein by your family size. And sometimes there's just not. And so if you are not getting it that way, then there's obviously the black market. But either way, it was very common for my mom to come home from school, and the only protein of choice, if they had a protein, was like frog legs. There was no chicken and pork and beef. Now, my parents have a really awesome story, which is like a whole conversation in and of itself. Ask me about my parents. I'll talk about my parents all day long. They're one of the success stories. My mom got out through the Mariel boat lift. She was literally on a shrimp boat with like hundreds of Cubans, very similar to a boat like this. And my dad, because men are more valuable to the Cuban government, he couldn't just like get out. And so he had a fake cardiac arrest during the medical exam to fail, so that him and his family could qualify for tourist visas so that they could go to San Jose, Costa Rica. Now, when you're on a tourist visa in Costa Rica, you're not allowed to work. So when You're in a country for 2 years unable to work. You are literally at the mercy of your neighbors to feed you. And so when my parents came to the United States for a new life, part of that new life required a new identity. Yes, they were Cuban, but now they were American. And my mom couldn't finish her medical pursuit, and my dad couldn't be this national trainer for handball. They had to be business owners because nobody would hire Cuban immigrants who couldn't speak English. And in Florida, what's like the number one need is air conditioning because it's hot. You don't want to be an attic, like in the attic at 2 p.m. working on an AC unit because it's like 200-degree sauna. But that's what my parents did for 33 years to provide for me and my siblings. And they went from an identity that was completely dependent to an independent identity, from captive to free. So when my little boy asked me, Mommy, or he calls me Mimi, super cute, Mimi, how much money did you make? It was one of those moments where like how I answer this question is going to really set him up or not. Because I think all of us can agree, the older that we get, both professionally but also in age, money has a very different meaning at 10 than it does at 20, 30, 40, 50, and more. Right? And as marketers, I think too often we define ourselves and our worth by how much money we are able to generate, either for the companies or in our own paychecks. And the thing that I've learned through entrepreneurship, through this discipline, this relationship that I have with marketing that I love deeply, is that money is made and lost. It comes and it goes. If it's not happening this quarter, it's happening next quarter. If it's not happening for me this job, it's going to happen for me at this job. Money is transactional. Money goes in and out. But identities don't. Identities last. And when you understand that you are in the business of human transformation, you can never sell anything else. There is nothing more giving, more gratifying, more fulfilling than to help somebody become something more. I've been a marketer for 17 years, and I will tell you that I am no longer a buy this marketer. I'm a be this marketer. And so my question for you is, are you? Thank you very much. I said I'd go all the way to 45, but we got 2 minutes.
In that case, is there any questions from the audience? I can run over to you with the mic. Just throw your hand if you have a question. Yes. We have 2 minutes here.
What did you tell your son?
Huh?
What did you tell your son?
I told him that Mommy could have made a lot of money, but I didn't. I changed a lot of lives today, literally, because I had just finished one of my intensives talking about identity. So it was a really significant moment. And I was like, nailed it. You know what I mean? Because most of the time you're not nailing it as a parent. You're like, oh, yeah. Deer in headlights. Yeah.
What's your podcast?
The Rainmaker podcast. I interview marketers every single week. And a lot of the stories that I just got to share with all of you are on the podcast right now. And they're incredible. Really, really, really cool interviews. Thank you.
Another question or two?
I think I'm doing an inner sanctum next. Yes. Getting real intimate. Okay. Well, thank you so much.